Hello, welcome to the conversations here on NTA Network. My name is Rita Abuja. As usual on the program, we have something interesting to talk about. I say we because, as usual, I am not alone. Let's get to meet the beautiful people on my couch this day. Should I start from you?
Wow. Hi, Rita.
Hello.
My name is Chukuma Ohaka. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nike.
Guys, my name is Devan.
And I'm Z.
All right.
I'm Dr. Daramola Tayo.
Okay, then, because he said he's a doctor, I might as well tell you what we're talking about today. We are going to be talking about depression. Yes, I'm sure you've heard that word more than once. But what is depression? How can you identify it? How can you solve it if it is a problem that you have? We're going to talk about all of this right after this break.
When there's a child out there that's not getting the same that your own child is getting, the difference will tell, and there will come a time in the society where that child is going to take its pound of flesh.
Where you can actually, everything from watching a program with the child, you can start off the conversation from something on the TV and say, oh, you know.
For me, it's like, hurry up with this business. And the other one said, Auntie, it's not about me, it's about the guys. They're not ready to marry.
Yes. If she wants to ask something, no, I know my mother very well. In fact, the most interesting one is when I put up pictures on WhatsApp, you know, Snapchat filters and all that, she will call me, remove that picture. There was a day I got tired of all that and I said,
I don't think in gender boxes at all. I just get on with it.
A man that would dare to ask the wife, who do you think you are? That is a real man.
In fact, our husbands are our firstborns. The husband needs more attention than even the children.
It's not only about work, it's not only about family. They need to take the time to look after themselves, and we don't. We don't do that.
They took my money. I paid every fees. I never asked to be hoisted as a governor. I wanted to be allowed to go out there and contest for the position of governorship candidate first.
There's nothing greater than looking back and seeing that while you were aspiring, you were able to inspire others.
Empowered to women. Yes, we need to have more women, more multitaskers around Nigeria to get Nigeria working.
Definitely.
Welcome back. It is still the conversations here on NTA Network. And I said we're talking about depression. First, let's try and get a meaning to what this is all about. I'm going to start with Doctor here because, well, you're the medical person. So what is depression really?
Well, when we talk about depression, technically people assume that it's a general feeling of sadness, which may not be too correct. Because when we talk about depression, it goes beyond just being sad momentarily. It's a state with some number of symptoms aggregated. Now, of course, undue sadness is one of them. My choice of the word undue is not my own choice per se. The sadness has to be undue. You may not be immediately able to identify what is causing the sadness. Then there is undue loss of interest in activities that used to be of interest to the person. And there may be undue loss of energy. Now, these three together are like the core features of a depressed patient. Now, there are other features that may come. Loss of appetite, excessive loss of weight. In both male and female, there may be loss or reduction in their level of libido. They are generally disinterested in activities around them. It gets to the level that the patient may begin to view the world in a way that he feels he becomes hopeless. And as regards to people around him, he feels worthless or helpless. So at that stage, they start thinking of suicide. And that's when the suicidal ideation comes, because there's really nothing to look forward to. You feel hopeless, you feel worthless, then what exactly is the person living for? But there are grades of depression: the mild, the moderate, and the severe. In mild depressive disorder, the patient may actually present like an anxiety disorder. They may tell you that they have feeling of heaviness on their head. Some people have crawling sensation, which you hear people talk about, that things move around my body.
Wow.
Those could be early signs of depression. Many people complain about peppery sensation. It is not uncommon to hear things like internal heat, feeling of heaviness, whether on the leg or on the neck. It also affects the sleep. The depressive kind of sleep is such that you sleep for a short period and wake early. So we call it the early waking kind of sleep. And typically, when they sleep and wake up, even if the relatives tell you that I saw him snoring, the patient will tell you, I didn't sleep. And what happened? They don't feel refreshed despite the so-called sleep.
Okay.
Because they don't have energy, they also may not be able to carry out activities around them. And so when patients with depression tend to be getting treatment or tend to be getting better, those that have suicidal ideation, I caution people that that's not the time to say hallelujah, because when they are seemingly getting better, could be the time that they will commit the act of suicide. And that is what we call paradoxical suicide. It's a paradox because you expect that somebody that is already getting well should, yes, you now come and see the person has committed suicide. So the definition of depression, clinical depression, goes beyond momentary feeling of sadness. There are other things that
But what
accompany
causes it? What will cause a person to become depressed?
When one is exposed to pressure or stress that is unremitting, especially in predisposed individuals, then they can get to the level of being clinically depressed.
Or a void that has a long-term void that has not been filled. Like, for example, a lot of people, when they lose somebody special in their life, there's that void. And when they're unable to fill the void, they fall into deep sadness, anxiety that triggers depression. I've witnessed back in high school, there was a kid that committed suicide.
Oh my God.
Actually, in school, he was in the school premises. And from what I remember, he lost his mother. His father was a drug addict.
Oh my God.
So it was basically he had a father, but he didn't have a father because the father was never around. He was in and out of the hospital, in and out of rehab, and he was always bullied in school. He would come to school looking very haggard, wearing the same clothes for a week. And you know how kids are, they're mean. So they bullied him and he went into this deep level of depression. He came to school one day, went into the bathroom and just killed himself.
How old was he?
I think he was like 14, 15. Because we're in high school, so it was like, 14, 15.
Do you know if he had siblings?
I don't know.
So there is a real thin line between sadness and depression.
Yes.
How do you know when someone has crossed
that
line?
bridge from being sad to being depressed?
You know, you'll be fine then. But how do you know the person is really going over to the dark side?
You see them, they step back from society. You might look at it as, oh, come on, let's go and hang out. They'll give you an excuse. Every occasion, there's an excuse to it. There's a reason why they don't want to be at a happy event. There's a reason they don't want to be in public. They're always in dark places. They're always quiet. They're always in deep thoughts. You might not physically see that they're sad, but you see that they're withdrawn. So that is them going in the left direction.
Okay,
Well,
you were going to say something. Dr.
Yes,
Amala.
I was going to say that, of course, unremitting stressor. Like she was trying to give an example of the young chap that committed suicide eventually. It's obvious that whatever challenge or challenges he was facing was unremitting, so it's persistently there. It could lead to depression, but we should also note that it is not all depressed patients that are severe. That's why at the beginning I said there is mild, moderate, and severe, and there are those atypical cases of depression, like the agitated depression, where the patient may not necessarily appear sad or unhappy.
Yeah, I was going to.
They keep a smiley exterior. They are able to communicate with you, but deep inside, they are depressed. So it takes you having interaction with this patient or with the client, being able to get into their mode of thinking and be empathic so that they would open up to you. That's why when you are relating with anybody in mental health, you need some level of good privacy. You need the client to trust you, to be able to trust you with his or her information. You cannot betray your emotions, no matter what the person says, by either laughing or looking too carried away with whatever information is giving you. You don't appear too excited. You don't make the patient feel unsafe to give you his or her information.
Nick had said something about there being a thin line between being sad and then, just tipping over to getting depressed. How do people get to know and admit the fact that I'm actually going through a depression? And two, the fact that our society has this stigma thing. If I'm going to see a psychiatric, hi, I want to see a psychiatric, oh, what's wrong? Is she going mad? That is the first assumption. Yeah. How do we walk around that?
Before we even go there, I'm sorry, I'm going to use the layman's language. In my thinking, and I'm probably wrong, this is where you guys come in. The psychiatrist is the person who deals with the mad people. Then the psychologist is the one who handles things like depression and things like that.
You are.
I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. So the psychiatrist also handles the depressed person. What's the difference between a psychiatrist? What's the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist?
The psychiatrist handles all issues of mental health.
Okay.
And then a psychologist.
Yes. Now, the psychiatrist has prescription rights because he's a doctor who has done postgraduate studies to specialize in mental health.
Okay.
Yes. The psychologist does talk therapy. They don't prescribe.
Emotional therapy.
Okay.
So they walk through with you, they use psychotherapy, the psychological methods of treatment.
Okay.
While in addition to that, the psychiatrist could prescribe treatment modalities.
Isn't talk therapy more of a Western thing?
No, ma.
No.
That's the perception people have, but that should not be the case, right?
You see, even traditionally, our culture of having people to discuss with, share your problems with, is protective. And that is an aspect that is going down fast, and we're seeing more of these mental health challenges. Because everybody is on the fast lane. Exactly. You hardly relate. You sit with a group of people, everybody is busy on his or her phone, checking different information. You hardly say hello to each other. So you are total strangers all through the period you are together. So you are not really sharing anything. As opposed to before now, where you meet once and you become friends and you carry on this relationship and it becomes a trusted relationship where if you have a challenge, you can actually share. I doubt if you have 5 families in Abuja that you could just walk up to and offload your mind.
Yeah.
These are the challenges I'm having, without them looking at, why is she bothering me with this information? Is she trying to take advantage of me? Because everybody is striving to make ends meet. And that is the kind of society we have right now. That everybody, somebody said we have faulty parenting. And I'll speak to add what led to it. The father has to work, the mother has to work. They cannot sit at home. because they have to pay school fees, they have to pay rent, they have to buy fuel, they have to feed the children. And maybe the father's salary or the mother's salary alone is not enough. So both of them are in the labor market. They are striving to make ends meet. Who then caters for the children?
So then it's safe to say from what we are saying so far that, you know, some of the things that are making us to now see or experience increase in the number of patients who have depression issues also a social factor. Would it also be safe to say that it's very possible that each one of us have gone through some form of depression? I think I have.
I was going to say, I was going to ask doctor if I'll be wrong to say that there is what's called social depression. Because you said mild, this.
Yeah.
No, I mean, from my own point of view, I'm not a doctor, so I could say social. Because you could see most people, if you follow on social media, you see sometimes most people seem to be very vocal on the social media. But when you have interaction with them physically, you see that what they are on social media is an opposite of who they are. You see that people come to social media to come say a whole lot of things, but deep down in their homes, they are dying. And now they give a wrong impression to the people out there. Now you see someone who is innocent or someone who innocently read about someone's achievement without knowing that the achievement that you are reading about is not the supposed achievement. And the person that has is in his or her house dying, and all of a sudden the reader of this so-called achievement goes on comparing himself
to that
person and begin to see himself as a failure. And by so doing, it triggers off things that are not meant to be triggered off. And whatever effort that the person would have been putting in place to make sure that the person is succeeding, the person begins to go backwards, seeing that since I've done this, I've not gotten to this height. My mates have done this, look at what they have done, look at where they have visited. And it triggers off something, and the people begin to have a kind of psychological...
No. So that's
am I right,
social factors causing...
That could be social...
Okay, I would like to say that medically or clinically, before you say that somebody is depressed, these features have to be there consistently for a minimum of 2 weeks by the ICD-10 definition. And so that I'm unhappy today and tomorrow doesn't make me depressed because it is situational. And this situation could be reversed easily, and I carry on with my normal life. But a situation where you stay in that state of unhappiness and there are other accompanying features, then we can't safely diagnose the person as depressed. Now, like I said, 2 weeks time period before you make the diagnosis. Erosion of our social skills is actually a major issue. Psychological theories have been propounded, especially by Sigmund Freud and Erik Erikson. These are people in psychological medicine, and they talked about the developmental stages of development through life. Now, the first stage is the oral stage of psychosexual development as proposed by Sigmund Freud, who is the father of psychoanalysis, by the way. And at this stage, the child or the human being gets pleasure from everything that comes to the mouth, oral. So it's not uncommon that a child is crying, the mother puts the breast into his mouth, he sucks, and he keeps quiet. But beyond 1 year, you are expected to graduate to another level or phase of psychosexual development, which is the anal phase. What am I trying to say so that it won't sound like a lecture? From oral to anal to phallic, then latent phase, then genital. Now, if you don't negotiate these stages of psychosexual development successfully, you are prone to having issues, whether at the present or later in life. If you regress to an early stage of psychosexual development, you are definitely going to have issues. If you stagnate at a certain stage, you are definitely going to have issues. So I say that people have to successfully negotiate the stages of development psychologically so that, for example, no matter what I see on social media, it doesn't affect me. Because I know what I set out to achieve.
But you
I
see,
have a
that's you.
standard.
Yeah.
And no, I'm
You
saying
have built
that
your brain to a certain level to be able to handle failure and achievement. As a doctor, I'm able,
even as an individual.
An individual.
I think I would differ a bit. It is about negotiations. It is about negotiation. For example, in parenting, if you overprotect your child, it's disadvantageous.
Yep.
If you overexpose your child, it is disadvantageous.
I would like to say depending on the situation and the individual.
You see,
I was overly protected. When I say overly protected, if I say hachum, my mother will say, oh, let's go to the hospital. But I would like to say I'm probably one of the strongest people you'd come across.
Sorry, may I ask you where you schooled? Were you a boarding student or a day student?
Do you want my whole...
No.
Do you have enough time?
I've
done boarding school.
Thank you. When we talk about protection, overprotection, it doesn't
They wouldn't
mean
even
your
let you go to
parents.
boarding.
Exactly.
No, see,
as an
this
only
boarding
child,
school that I went to was 3 months of boarding school.
From the doctor's point of view, I've seen parents who, because of the overprotection thing, they don't allow their children this access to boarding school.
They don't go. They
I
don't
didn't go to
develop
boarding school at an early age.
In some cases,
I went to boarding school in secondary school.
That is still fair.
I would tell myself I'm a bit guilty because I'm learning a lot from what you just said. My son's school had an excursion to Ghana, and the young man said he wasn't going to go except, in fact, he went to school and said, I'm not going.
Okay. Why?
He said, I don't want to go.
Why did he want to go?
He asked me first of all, he gave me 3 reasons. He said, is it not Ghana? I said, yes. He said, Ghana is the 21st poorest country in the world. So
Wonderful.
Nigeria is bigger than Ghana. I'm like, no, but it's something you're going to learn from. He said, how much are you paying? Because he does that a lot. I told him, he said, that's way too much for Ghana. I said, but you need to go.
Negotiation.
Finally, yes, he tried to find a reason. He convinced me. I said, okay, go tell your teacher. He told the teacher called me. He now came back and told me, okay, on one condition. I don't want to go without money. So that was where he was going. Because he's so attached to his mom. So he felt like he was going to be away for too long.
How old is he?
10.
They can negotiate their way into and out of anything.
He's going to be away for too long, and he felt like I wasn't going to be away from my mom for this long. Now, something could have triggered this. We had watched on the internet a lot of people who had gone out on excursion and something bad happened to them. Yeah. So he had sent some messages in our head.
In the back of his head, he has
that
now,
message. Someone wants to be sure that wherever I am, my mom is there to
support and protection.
That was something I thought, and I said, okay, fine, your mom goes with you.
Okay.
Now, exposing a child to something like boarding school, you wouldn't say that kind of child is protected so much.
No. But Z said
hold on.
Let's go for just 3 months.
Hold on.
And
this boarding school that I went to, it wasn't like, the beginning of secondary school. I had already gone to 3 different secondary schools. And to me, I thought going to boarding school was going to be this fun experience. So I did everything possible. There was like 5 boarding schools. And my mom was like, nope. So I found a boarding school that the principal was friends with my grandmother. So it wasn't really like I was at boarding school because I could enter the car and come back home. so I negotiated the terms and conditions of this boarding school.
Let's not miss overprotection for care. Let's not mix them. Now, your parents cared. Reasonably so, because you're an only child. If I have only one child, I'm not expected to do less. But then, did they always stay by the school when you are in school? Do they bring your lunch and your breakfast to make sure you eat in their presence?
Okay, if I may come in. I experienced the typical, also only daughter kind of thing. I experienced the typical...
butter.
No. I did chores. I had to wake up at the same time as everybody else.
So you
to
were
that
not
degree.
overprotected.
No, I'm going somewhere. To that degree, I was I was raised as normally as possible within the home. Now, the issues would begin with my mom, particularly, with any interaction with the external environment.
Right.
I was a day student throughout my life, including university. Luckily, we had a university in Benue State. There was in the town where we lived. So I used to go to school and come back.
Sorry,
so throughout my life.
On your own, or you are dropped by the driver and picked by the driver?
Yeah, by that time, my mom had passed on. Had she been alive, it would have been...
You would have been escorted?
Yes, because throughout my life, and luckily my parents had the capacity to make that happen. So the driver taking you to school with your lunchbox and all that happened for me throughout primary school, secondary school. Lunchbox had to be abandoned in university, of course. And I'm graduating, I slept in the same room with my mother till she passed on.
Wow.
At what age?
She passed on when I was 20.
Wow.
Interesting.
I don't know if you're hearing me now.
So what?
I hear you loud and
now,
clear.
that's it. No, I'm still going somewhere.
Okay.
And it didn't work.
What didn't work?
I don't know, whatever it was they were trying to protect, she was trying to protect me from, but they brought the chaos into our home.
Exactly what I was getting to.
With the kinds of people that they would bring into our home, because it was a very small household. So my parents were always bringing in this cousin or the other person or the other one that they were trying to help and raise properly, because they were so upstanding people of the society that everybody wanted to give them their children to raise. And I remember that when I was about 12 years old, they brought one particularly mad girl to the house that would sit me and another small cousin down and give us a blow-by-blow account of terrible things that I'll not go into. She taught us how to smoke. She would send us to buy cigarettes, she would smoke, teach us how to do it so that you don't cough and don't choke and everything. And this was going on in that home where I could not go out. I couldn't go out. I couldn't socialize. I had to stay home. You go to school, you come back, you stay home.
Yeah.
And yet they would bring all these people into the house, protecting me. If God were to give me the opportunity to have children again, my kids are all grown, it's something I will not do.
Bring people into the home?
No. That's...
Close them.
Anytime you see, most of the time, they wind up damaging the child in one way or another.
Yeah,
so Doc, before you say this, it is then safe to say that parenting has a very important role to play when we talk about people being depressed, whether as a child or as an adult. The way the person is raised has a key role to play, right, Doc? Is that it?
Yes, and beyond that.
What about your personality?
Etiology.
Personality traits.
Parenting actually is part of what forms your personality.
Let me explain.
The way you're raised.
Let me explain this. You see, on any issue in mental health, you don't just take a factor. It's multifactorial. Any challenge at all. Now, when you're talking about etiology, which is what we're delving into, you look at the conditions even when they were pregnant for this person. So it goes beyond just the parenting or just the event that happened. Right from pregnancy, what happened? Was there good nutrition? Did the mother suffer any accidents? Did she have any of the what we call Torches syndrome, which are infections that could affect the baby while in utero, while being pregnant?
Wow.
State of nutrition, I've mentioned that. Now, beyond the pregnancy, how was the child given birth to? Was there difficult deliveries? Were there accidents? You understand? After delivery, how was the child raised? Were you giving conflicting reports? There are, in my part of the country, when we were growing up, when your mom looks at you and says, go and eat it, you know you dare not.
You're not supposed to move now. And that's not your part of the country. It's a Nigerian thing.
Take it.
It's a Nigerian thing.
For some other child, that could be confusing because they are hearing take it. And if you dare do that, the kind of reprimand that you get is way out of proportion. To even infections when you are growing up and as an adult. These are things that could affect the mental health of an individual.
Okay.
What did you indulge in? Are you into substance? Are you living healthily? All those ones come to play. Now, we always say that stress plays a common pathway in the etiology of mental illness. It doesn't mean it's only stress. It is stress acting on the predisposition of the individual. I forgot to mention that there is also genetic contribution. I'm not quick to mention that because people interpret it as you inherit the mental illness. It's not like that. It's not like the Mendelian order of inheritance, which people would quickly translate because when you want to marry, they say go and find out the lineage. Do they have somebody?
Mental illness.
What we have is genetic contribution, genetic influence. It puts the person more at risk, providing there is adequate template or adequate trigger for the person to break down.
But please, let me just break your chain of thought. Can a young child, when I say young child, I'm talking preteen, be depressed?
Yes.
Like under the age of 10?
You see, we have, yes.
10. Yes.
The manifestation.
How can you tell? Because children, by reason of who they are, very immature and everything, are easily triggered by small things, cry a lot,
but you said
can be moody and all that. So how
weeks.
can you tell that this child is not just acting out, it's something else, especially if it's a child?
You see, there are a lot of developmental disorders in children which you have to sieve through. But suffice to say that at any stage that you are interacting with a child, you have to do due diligence and make sure that you see the child outside the caregivers. Yes, you have to.
Your child.
Yes, you have to explain to them. For example, I could be providing an environment that is not conducive for the child, but once we come before the therapist or before the doctor, I'm very loving. The same thing when you are seeing a husband and a wife. The man could be a bully, but once they get to the clinic, he's the best husband that you've ever met. So you have to be able to separate and sieve through. Now, there are things the child will manifest, which may be beyond the scope of this discussion, but suffice to say that there are those that will come up with conduct disorders, for example. There is school refusal, for example. There are those that are always falling ill in some situations, and you discover that really this is becoming so frequent, and you want to look further. What exactly is happening to this child? They may not manifest the typical, I'm sad, I have undue loss of energy. It may not be classical. The same thing in the elderly. It may be a bit different, but you would still be able to get matter for trained people. And that is why it is advised that you seek expert opinion.
I have a question. I know when you think about therapy, the talk therapy you mentioned, you know how it is abroad. You see the long couch and the person would lie there and start talking about everything. How important is it for you to piece all the things in my past, getting me to talk about it? If I'm classified or diagnosed as clinically depressed, do we have to go there? Do you have to start piecing all that? How was your mom? How old was your mom when she was pregnant with you? Is there any behavior? You know, all that.
It's very important.
The problem is here and now. Why don't we tackle that now?
Why
go there? Why make me relive some of the things I'd rather not talk about?
Because some of the problems that you're going through now psychologically started back then that you didn't know about. It's one of those things of, is it deja? Should I say it's not deja vu? Or it could be one of those self-conscious things. So it's necessary to dig into your past to hear the different things that you've been through in your life to know exactly how you got to where you are now with this problem.
I'm just thinking because it's hard enough to convince someone
to go see
a therapist. And then the doctor starts with, oh, okay, so tell me about your childhood. I mean, you're already like...
to tell me about your happy days.
My fence is up already.
It's not your happy days that caused you to be depressed. You don't become depressed from being overly happy. So if I say, tell me about your happy days, and you say, oh, yesterday I went to the amusement park, I had cotton candy, oh, I went to my cousin's house, we had a party. That's not what's making you depressed. Tell me about your sad days. Tell me what makes you upset. What makes you cry? What triggers this emotion? Yes, it's a hard thing. You have to relive those hard places that you went through in your life in order to get out what the problem is. Because how you would explain, for example, somebody rapes somebody in front of you. That image is stuck in your head. So now you're scared to interact with the opposite sex. By me asking you what makes you sad, probably you would think back of, this person raped me. And how you would explain it, your emotions that would come across as a trained psychologist, psychiatrist, psychologist, either one of them would be able to know this is the point of origin.
Right. You were going to say something, Dr.
Yes.
Delmas.
The psychological method that she described is just one of the many methods of psychological intervention.
Okay.
Yes, that's a case, a method. There are many other methods and therapies. When we say psychological intervention, it's not restricted to one method.
Okay.
Yeah, depending on the case at hand. Now, in understanding the present, you need a bit of the past.
Okay.
Yes. I once saw a patient who saw me with some challenges, and he didn't come back for a long time until he was forced to come back. And he told me, he said, when he saw me, that I asked too many questions. And by the time he was leaving me, he was wondering whether something was really wrong with him that he didn't know. So my method of obtaining information he felt was too intrusive or prying into his life.
Yeah.
And that's where we need to moderate in trying to intervene. You have to understand one client as opposed to the other. And that's why you see people that are involved in psychological management, they have to be patient.
But doctor, he came back.
He had to come back because this problem, would I say persisted or resurged?
Okay.
And
I'm
another
sure he sat
colleague
down and
had
thought about it and
another
realized that
colleague-
intruding behavior that you had kind of triggered him to think about.
Another colleague
Maybe.
had to make him see that he needed to still come back. You understand? And I was grateful that he opened up to tell me his challenges, and I smiled. And I told him I needed to rule out every other thing to be sure of what I'm dealing with so that I won't mismanage you.
Okay.
Now, in mental health, it is very important because, like she was trying to explain, I had also said that the etiology of any psychological challenge is not just the present. What has happened in the past serves as a template for the present to now act upon and grow. So if we don't understand what had happened previously, then we may just be treating headache rather than treating the cause of the headache.
I have a question, please. There's this very common saying, you're responsible for your own happiness. I struggle with it because as human beings, we do not exist in a vacuum. We are surrounded by circumstances, sometimes outside our control, and people we care about. I think it's practically impossible to be happy when your child is gravely ill, despite the fact that you're not the one who is directly ill. This is somebody you care about. Or you happen to be in an abusive marriage, could be emotionally abusive, physically abusive. So when people, when I don't know if it's if psychiatrists would agree that somehow, and if you would agree that I am directly responsible to make myself happy, how then do I prevent what is happening around me from affecting my emotions? How possible is that?
Have you ever heard of a situation, take yourself out of the situation and look into the situation?
Yes.
So now, because there are things around you that are happening, does not mean that at that very moment that you will not be happy. Your child being sick is the situation of the moment.
Yeah.
You go to the doctor, you see the doctor, they give you treatment. He or she is either getting better. That happiness starts to resurface because it never died away. You were never a sad person. You knew what happiness was. Happiness was in you. And you got to a situation where you had to step back from being happy. So yes, you are responsible for the happiness, for your happiness. Anybody coming around you, you have a choice to allow them to add to your happiness or take away from your happiness. It's a choice you give them.
May I sound a bit less judgmental?
Yeah.
Yes. Your psychological makeup affects your reaction to situations.
Okay.
And that is why we talk about the personality of an individual. By the way, your personality is not formed before the age of 18. We talk about development.
I did not know that.
When you talk about all these personality traits, sanguine,
before the age of 18,
and all those things.
Personality is formed when you are 18. You are still developing before the age of 18.
Wow.
And so, those things that comes together to give you your unique characteristics that is not duplicable or replicable in another person is what makes your personality unique.
Okay.
And so, when this is well formed, it could affect your reaction to situations. That is why you see the same situation, different reactions in different people. Support system comes into play. If you feel there is absolutely no support, you get exasperated easily. But if you have a way out, then you still have a cushion. And that is why different people have different levels of coping or defense mechanisms. These are psychological things that comes into play when you are faced with challenges. So if your defense is weak, if you are not able to cope, definitely you would be tossed by every event in life.
I was going to come into something that I also have read and seen recently that's been happening. A lot of people have attributed depression to a lot of suicidal events that happen in the society.
Yeah.
You see students kill themselves. Most recently, people have also talked about a man being dumped by a girl and he kills himself. And a student who is an A1 student, an A student in school, who is on the verge of becoming a first-class graduate, kills himself. What could have triggered that? What does it mean that the student's success is also not part of something that would have made him happy? Would the student's success push him to the act of killing himself?
You see, when we talk about stressors, it is not the volume. In some instances, yes, the volume of the stress matters, but the significance or the attachment you have to that event or object is what matters more. For example, I could lose this pen and I get to the level of breaking down. Why? Because of the attachment or the value I place on the pen. Probably it was given to my great-grandfather by somebody who is important, and he passed it to my grandfather, and eventually it got to me, something I've been hoping to get, and it gets missing. And somebody says, I would even buy you a more expensive pen. And I'm like, no, it cannot be replaced.
That's the...
And that pushes me.
What about depression and productivity in the workplace?
Definitely, depression affects productivity. That's, you cannot overlabel that, because, like I mentioned earlier, there is loss of interest, even in activities that were of interest to you. So even if you were, as a man, most men, maybe except me, they love football. And they say they...
You don't love football?
I watch football.
Okay, just kidding.
No, I just watch football. I'm not that sentimental.
I am not, so it's not
you. Okay, thank you.
We have unique men on set.
I'm not abnormal. So, but this is, let's give an example of an Arsenal fan who's crazy about it, and they say the team is coming to play in the National Stadium. You expect that he will be the first to be there. And he goes like... is it? He's not interested. So you can juxtapose that with the situation at work. By the way, most people go to work because they need to earn a living, not because they love their job.
Exactly.
So it's even one of the easiest things or the first things that will be affected.
Now, as a society, do you think that organizations, by that I mean both employers, whether it's government or private, pay enough attention to the mental health well-being of their staff?
The answer is a definite no. Not only organizations, even the society, the country. The answer is no.
I have two questions for you, Doctor. Number one, can I self-diagnose myself? Can I say, I think I'm depressed? I mean, I think I'm depressed. Can I do that? And then two is, how effective are interventions?
The first question, yes and no. Yes, because if you are knowledgeable enough, you know that there are aspects of you that are not functioning optimally. And what should that do for you is to seek intervention, to seek help.
Okay.
Yes. Now, if you don't have any knowledge at all, you may not even know how to seek help. And that is what informs most of our populace going to spiritists.
Wow.
Yes.
He's a wahoos.
I've heard a lot of people say, I had something crawling all over my body and I went somewhere I don't want to mention. You understand? And it disappeared. These are just like anxiety symptoms which will respond to symbolization. By the way, I must say that as Africans, we are highly suggestible group of people. If I do this to you, you tend to feel I'm threatening you. Why don't you think I'm trying to strike a music note? You understand? Why do you think why do you think this means I'll deal with you?
It's because of its basis in culture.
Yes,
it is. Well, I'm trying not to delve into too many things, like our collective unconscious. You understand?
I'm reciting a poem in my head.
Does intervention work? Definitely, yes. That's why I'm still in business, man.
So the intervention I'm talking about is the one where friends, family gather to speak to someone. More like a non-professional intervention where they call you to order, so to speak.
When you say calling to order, is a bit
brash,
punitive.
Okay.
Calling to order is not the solution.
Okay.
But support.
Okay.
Yes. Social support is an integral part of management. We don't manage in isolation. When people have psychological issues, we bring in the family members. We want to identify what are the practices or challenges, even in the family, that may be impacting negatively on this person we are dealing with.
Please, one last question. I'm sorry, because it has been running around in my mind. We've talked about the link between depression and self-harm. Can you be depressed and harm others?
Yes.
That's a good question.
I'll give you a classical example. A depressed mother could commit infanticide, not because she's wicked, but because she wants to save the child from the gloom of the world. She feels responsible that, I've brought this innocent child to this hopeless situation.
Hopeless and nothingness world.
Let me just help the child to exit. So the answer is yes. A depressed patient could poison herself and other people because she doesn't see any future.
I guess that's where you have situations, I don't know whether we've experienced that here, but at least from in other climes where we hear somebody killed the wife, killed the children, and eventually
it's happening with quite a bit of regularity nowadays in Nigeria.
Well, there are many sides to suicide. There's one called suicide pact, where 2 or 3 people agree to commit suicide together. So until we actually do a reconstruction, we may not understand what actually led to the
It looks like we're going to have to continue this discussion on another edition of the program. It's like depression is a never-ending issue when we talk about it.
Because we've not touched the social media side.
Exactly, and we need to go. But before we go, Doc, what would you say to organizations and generally about their staff well-being in 30 seconds, if it's possible, in terms of mental health?
Well, it's obvious that even complimentary remarks at place of work goes a long way in reassuring whoever you are working with, rather than adopting the punitive style. From recruitment, what we emphasize is the physical health. We never are concerned about the mental health. And many people will hide their mental health status because people are judgmental. Once they feel that you have a mental health challenge, they are putting your name on the next list for sack or resignation. And this makes people hide their challenges until it gets beyond what they can actually cope with. So we need to be more sensitive, we need to be more understanding, and we need to be more supportive, both in our workplace and in the society as a whole.
Wow, it's been quite an interesting discussion here. Like we said, we cannot exhaust it, at least not in one program, so we'll definitely be getting back to this issue some other time. It's been a very interesting conversation. I think just like I have, you've learned something new and you were planning to make changes to make your life better and run away from depression, right? If you have feedbacks or comments you want to share with us, feel free. Our social media handles are scrolling on the screen. Talk to us and we can always get back to you. On behalf of all the wonderful discussants we had in the studio today, my name is Rita Ewuju. Thank you for joining us on The Conversations right here on NTA Network. Say bye-bye.
Bye.
As a physiology